You are in the rant wormhole where I rant about whatever my $15 a month plus patrons want me to rant about. You can get one of these by being one of those. This one is for Wolfborg, who says, I'm the guy from last month who got his rant deleted by Patreon, so you told me to give you 2 rant topics this month and that you'd make it a longer vid. My first rant that I tried to send last month was to rant about how much power anime directors actually have. I've always wondered just how much actual control they have over a show, especially after watching Rinshi Ekora-chan, where every episode has a different director and it's an entirely different experience as a result. My second rant that my friend Mark wanted me to ask was, if you had the ability to do so, how would you have saved Darling in the Franxx? Alright, so about the directing thing, I mean, I'm not in the industry, I'm not an authority on this, I've not been a director myself. However, basically, what a director is, I mean, it's right there in the title, but you really got to think about what it means. They are directing everybody else to move towards, like, this singular vision. It's sort of like everything has to go through the director. You know, they have to have their stamp of approval on everything that's going on. And there's a system of, you know, sub-directors, depending on the scale of the production. You know, it could just be one director and 5 other people, and that director is just checking everyone's work to make sure it all comes out correctly. But, like, mainly the director is there to, you know, helm the project and make sure that everyone is doing their job right. So I think that I don't know how people really envision projects like this, but I really think that for the most part it starts off with whoever is relevant having a roundtable discussion. It's not so much about control, it's about community. It's about working together to define a vision of what are we trying to do here, right? So you might have a room where you've got the director, the character designer, everybody else on the production, you know, and they will at the beginning discuss, what are we doing? What are our goals? What do we want this to be? Let's figure that out, you know, and once they've hashed that out, people start experimenting and showing things to each other. Some, you know, maybe the character designer whips up the character designs, they show them to the director. The director goes, this is exactly what I want. Or he says, you need to change this or that. And they go back and they return. You got the writer, and the writer, you know, gives the script to the director, and he says, this is the script I want, or this isn't the script I want. Or maybe the director writes the script, as happens sometimes. You know, like, it really depends on the show, and it also depends on other factors like, is it an adaptation? If it's an adaptation, then the original author or the original creator often has a lot of say in it as well, because basically if they don't give you approval to make the show, you can't, you know. So there's that part of the conversation as well. Some of them put more trust in the director. For instance, the creator of Sangatsu no Lion, who basically wanted Studio Shaft to go as crazy as they possibly could on her story, and they were the ones who were like, we're not going to do that. Like, we're going to keep this in the realm of what your fans will actually appreciate. But, like, you know, that came down to Akiyuki Shinbo's decision as the, you know, the guy who was sort of the the chief director on the project, to say, like, I want this to be something that will satisfy the fans, even while we, you know, try to bring the story to life as best we can with whatever means we have as anime staffers, you know. So it's really a project by project kind of thing, but I really think that people underestimate how communal productions tend to be. You know, a lot of people have, because of the way we talk about directors and the way we talk about shows, and the popularity of auteurism as an idea, we want to lay everything on the director. And ultimately you kind of can, because everything does have to pass through the director in order to get final approval. But even then, the director doesn't necessarily have as much control as the producer, because the producer is the one who puts the money down on the project, and they are the one who hires the director and who hires the staff members, you know, with the director. They work together to bring a staff together to make a project. So really the producer kind of has the most control, but, like, you know, producers are not generally, like, necessarily creative staff members. They're the people who are figuring out how the funding's going to come together for the project, sort of telling the director what they can do. You know, telling the director, like, hey, here's how much money you can spend, here's how many episodes you get, here's where we're going to be broadcast, here's what you aren't allowed to include in the show. You know, the director will have to, you know, actually give checks on everything. But, like, a director could do nothing. Like, they could just basically delegate all the jobs to everybody and then just approve whatever they come up with, like, if they wanted to. So again, it's really a project by project basis. It just comes down to how much faith does the director have in their staff, how much control do they want over the project, what are they approving, you know. They kind of have final say, but at the same time, so like the producers have a lot of say, the television networks or whoever's broadcasting the show or releasing the show, you know, can ultimately just, if the director could completely, like the whole team could make a show, and if it's not what the station wants or not what the, you know, companies want, they, unless there's a contract involved, they could potentially just fucking shelve that shit and just go, fuck it, you know, it's not worth we're just going to cut our losses. Not that they're likely to do that, because, you know, probably they'll make some money off of releasing the goddamn thing in some form. But, yeah, it's complex. There's a lot of people involved in producing stuff. Anyway, as for your second question, how would I fix Darling in the Franxx? Just cut half of it. Just cut half of it. Like, Darling in the Franxx has good moments. It has times where it's got good action scenes, some hype moments. I like the characterization of the main two characters. I like 02 and the main guy, and their relationship. All the other characters are completely forgettable and fucking worthless. Like, I would just probably cut down the number of characters that are in the show, cut all the fucking insipid dialogue, all the boring back and forth banter, all the bullshit, and just, like, make it a tight 12-episode experience that, you know, relies more on just, like, having great designs and great action, and not so much on trying to be, like, a fully fledged series when it doesn't have enough to go on. Like, there's just not enough meat on its bones to justify being 24 episodes long. I've seen people say that, like, they think the show needs to be longer, and I see this a lot of the time, where people will say, like, oh, the show would be good if it had just had more time. I don't think that's almost ever the case. I think the problem is they didn't use the time well. It's that the scenes are boring and drag on and don't give enough, like, there's too many repetitive scenes. There's too many scenes of characters having dialogue that doesn't progress the narrative or really tell you anything new about them. So, like, they just could have crammed more into that time. If they had to make it 24 episodes, then the key would just be to make it more fucking interesting. You know, like, just give the characters more going on, more plot, more, like, it's kind of a trouble that comes from having characters like this who are, like, young teens who don't really have anything going on in their lives other than that they are participating in this narrative. Like, there's no more to the characters that would lead you to be curious about them or want to see them explored more. Like, I don't think that there's anything that these guys are doing that I didn't see in the first episode, you know? So, like, there's nowhere to go with the characters when they don't have lives, you know, or they don't have ambitions or, like, real thoughts outside of what pertains to the matter at hand. So that's why it ends up feeling so thin and, like, and spread out over way too long. So yeah, I guess that's my answer.